Hello, today we're going to learn about prime and composite numbers. A prime number has exactly two factors, one and itself. As you can look in this chart, all the green numbers are prime numbers because they only have two factors, one and itself. So let's take a closer look at those numbers that are highlighted green. Now we have 2, 3, 5, 7, and so on. Notice these numbers. If I take a look at 3, and I want to think of all the factors that create the number 3, and you can even think of what are the multiplication facts that create that number. Well, we know 1 times 3 is 3, but I can't think of another multiplication fact that creates the number 3. Therefore, 1 and 3 are the only factors for the number 3, making it a prime number. If I take a look at, let's say, 19, and I think about what are all the multiplication facts that create the number 19. Well, I know 1 times 19 is 19, and as I go through my facts, I can't find any other facts that create the number 19. Therefore, 1 and 19 are the only factors of the number 19, which is why we can classify the number 19 as a prime number. Now we also have composite numbers. Composite numbers have more than two factors. Now notice in this chart there's many numbers highlighted in yellow. Those are composite numbers. There are significantly more composite numbers than prime numbers. Now it's important that we can identify the type of numbers we have here and classify them as either prime or composite. It's the same thing as if we were to put labels on something. Let's say if we have students and teachers. These numbers also have labels as well, either prime or composite numbers. Now let's take a closer look at some of these numbers that are highlighted in yellow. So if I look at, let's say, the number 8, and I know right away 1 times 8 is 8. In fact, 1 and itself are always going to be factors of that number. But now we need to think, can we find any other factors that create that number 8? Well, I know 8's an even number, so 2 is a factor, and 2 times 4 is 8. So that gives me already another factor. So clearly the number 8 has more than two factors. 1 times 8 is not the only multiplication facts that create the number 8. 2 times 4 also creates the number 8. And that's why we classify the number 8 as a composite number. Now let's take a look at the number 24. Right away, 1 times 24 is a multiplication fact that creates the number 24. But I know it's an even number, so right away 2 happens to be a factor, and 2 times 12 is 24. But I also know that 3 times 8 is 24, and 4 times 6 is 24. So clearly 24 has many, many factors, which is why we classify the number 24 as a composite number. Now, I want you to take a look at this frog here. And this frog says 2 is a prime number. Now, 2 is my lucky number for several reasons. First reason, my birthday happens to be July 2nd. I do love Derek Jeter, and his number was 2. And the third most important reason is that 2 is the only even prime number. That means 2 is a prime number because it only has two factors, 1 in itself. So 1 times 2, or 1 and 2, are the only factors that create the number 2. Now that's the only even prime number. All other even numbers are classified as composite numbers. So that's why 2 is a very, very special number. It's the only even prime number. Now, this chart here is used to help you classify these numbers as prime or composite. As a reminder, prime numbers have exactly two factors, 1 in itself, while a composite number has more than two factors. Now our goal here is to classify each of these numbers as either prime or composite. Now I actually like to list out my factors on the side to help me identify if it's prime or composite. So for this first number here, we have 2. Like I just said, it is my lucky number. It happens to be the only even prime number, which is going to help me identify this as a prime number. But let's prove that it is prime. So we know that it's a prime number because it only has two factors, 1 and itself. And 1 times 2 are the only multiplication facts that create the number 2. When that is it, then you can classify that as a prime number. Now we have the number 12. So we have to identify this as prime or composite. First thing I'm going to do is list out my multiplication facts or factors that create the number 12. And immediately 1 times itself are always the first factors. Now I notice that 12 is an even number. So that means 2 is a factor. So 2 times something is 12. 2 times 6. And I notice that 3 times 4 is also 12. And I believe that is it. Now, regardless, even if I could keep listing out the factors, I already know there's clearly more than 2 factors. So right away, we can classify this number 12 as a composite number. Now, let's take a look at 13. Well, right away, I know we have 1 times 13. But I'm trying to think, 2 times something gives me 13, 3 times something gives me 13. And as I'm going through my facts, I can't find anything else that creates the number 13. So our only factors are 1 in itself, which is why we're going to classify the number 13 as a prime number. Now we have the number 18. Right away, I'm going to first list out 1 times 18. And I notice this is an even number. So I have 2 times 9. And I also know that 3 times 6 also gives me 18. Now, clearly here, I did list out all the factors, but right away, I noticed that it's a composite number because I immediately had more than 2 factors. So that's why we can classify this number 18 as a composite number. Now in these problems here, your goal is to actually just check off the factors of that number. And this is a little way to help you identify if they're prime or composite by listing out the factors or the multiplication facts that create this number. Now, I notice here that this question has boxes, which is going to be a reminder to myself that there's going to be more than one correct answer. When you have circles, there's only one correct answer. When you have boxes, there will be more than one correct answer. So if I take a look at 15, I need to go through each of these and see which ones confirm that they create the number 15. So 3 times 5 is 15. I'm going to check that off. 4 times 2 is only 8, so that can't be true. 1 times 15 is 15. 5 times 6 is 30, so that is not correct. So we have 2 correct answers here, listing out 4 factors that create the number 15, which is why we can classify this as a composite number. Now, number 5. All I have is 1 times 5. 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 4 is 12, 4 times 4 is 16. So unfortunately, we just have one answer here. So 1 times 5, we can clearly classify this as a prime number because there's only 2 factors, 1 and itself. Now we have 40. First, we look at 2 times 20, which happens to be 40. 3 times 40, well, that's impossible. That can't be 40. 5 times 8 is 40, and 4 times 10 is also 40. That gives me 3 correct answers, 6 factors. Clearly, the number 40 has more than 2 factors, which is why we can classify the number 40 as a composite number. Now, as a reminder, I encourage you to go back to this video and I encourage you to pause this page right now and write down the definitions of prime numbers and composite numbers to help you with today's activities. As a reminder, a prime number has exactly 2 factors, 1 in itself, while a composite number has more than 2 factors. Feel free to refer back to this video at any time on my YouTube channel.